Hello everyone, it's Mike Levin, July 12th, 2016. And over the last few days I've been doing tutorials, Python tutorials in Jupyter Notebook on some particular topics, namely the creation of a dictionary that has numeric keys of items A through ZZ in the order that columns are presented in spreadsheets. And I'm doing that because it's pretty clear to me at this time that my project, the tutorial, the subject of the tutorials, is going to be the gradual recreation of Pipulate under Jupyter Notebooks. Getting all the functionality that existed in Pipulate, I presume times 100, having the whole power of executable Python sitting right there under your fingers, but also being able to run batch jobs that are submitted by convention of just a spreadsheet layout that gets sort of submitted as part of the request, and then it gets pipulated, the returned spreadsheet or table or whatever. It'll work against CSV files or Google Spreadsheets, or probably even Excel, I'm thinking, or at least Excel files, very easily from inside Jupyter Notebook. That's the challenge. And I've already started working on a helper library that I call Goodsheet that I have in GitHub as a public repo that can be imported as the first thing in a Jupyter Notebook, which gives you a lot of the framework support functions, minus the actual Pipulate functions, the things that are supposed to be done on the internet, looked up, returned as values. Those are standalone functions. Things like page authority, crawling functions like pulling back the HTML for a URL or the title tag of a URL. The functions like title or page authority are Pipulate functions. They're actually standard Python functions because standard Python functions are fully compatible with Pipulate, which is part of its real appeal, I believe, because just normal Python programming is also creating modules for Pipulate. But the other side of it is the framework side, the convention stuff. And you know, Python already is a framework. Jupyter Notebook is its own framework. So, you know, we're creating a pyramid of frameworks. And my last little piece is just enough so that you can point Jupyter Notebook at a local CSV file in a conventional location, or at a Google Sheet, or at probably even an Excel sheet, and you know, articulate, this is my request, go. And then in that Jupyter Notebook session, the pipulation will occur and the streaming output will come back to Jupyter Notebook exactly the way it used to, in a very streaming Ajax-like fashion in the Pipulate interface. But now there's nothing custom from me in the picture except for support libraries to an existing user interface. A little bit of background here on why I took the why I kept being funneled back to the Google spreadsheet approach to batch processing spreadsheets. Well, beyond the obvious that Google Spreadsheets is an awesome hosting environment for tabular data, i.e. spreadsheets, it also has a web API, very easy to use via a module called GSpread, a very easy to use web API that Excel doesn't. So if you wanted to go in programmatically and control Microsoft Excel, you have to use the proprietary Microsoft tools. If you want to go in and control a Google spreadsheet, you just download something from GitHub and start issuing commands from a Python script, and you're controlling your spreadsheet. And that has tremendous appeal because in addition to that, it also provides most of the user interface for the pipulating process. All I needed to do with the additional stuff that I provided was a way to say, okay, go ahead and pipulate. And at one time, in one version of my, that led up to where I am, it was just one click on a bookmarklet, and it would automatically know from the spreadsheet that you have open which spreadsheet you wanted to pipulate, and it would know from the layout of the sheet itself the job that you wanted run. So one click on a bookmarklet, it started doing everything. That was 360i Tiger. In Pipulate, my version that I did for myself in GitHub, when you click on the bookmarklet, it brings up an intermediary user interface with some additional options that 360i Tiger did not have, which would let you choose from a few different job types and then hit submit. So I added one whole additional step to the user interface process to allow a little bit more customization and flexibility and power and the kinds of things you could do with Pipulate, making it significantly more advanced than 360i Tiger, but also introduced a custom user interface element that I was never really happy with. And the prospect of additional user interface components, especially ones that I would have to take responsibility for, managing, maintaining, upgrading, keeping up to date with the modern web development trends and changes in browsers, was not very appealing. Enter Jupyter Notebook. It is all the user interface bits that I didn't want to bring to the picture, living in a web browser already, ready to go. Doing so many wonderful integrations. Its purpose in life is to integrate and mash up and to make it easy to do those sorts of mashup integrations against different modules and data sources. Sitting there waiting for a Pipulate type thing to live on top of it. It's a completely natural fit, and I knew that the moment I first typed Jupyter Notebook enter and saw that tab come up in my web browser where you could execute live Python code from. I'm like, wow, okay, let me turn off the output buffer stream, trick of doing streaming from servers, because normally servers like to batch up a bunch of what it's going to write out to the browser and then send it in chunks. That's where you get that pop effect of things being drawn right away all at once, even though it's been loading. Actually, there's two reasons for that. One reason is a server-side cache. The other reason is the browser itself not showing until it's ready to show, until it's received all the items it requires in order to draw something. But that's another story. By turning off the output buffer stream, I can send output to the user right as things process, the pipulation process, such as it were, which is a big tenet of the system that some of the more thick-skulled people out there really didn't get. That's sitting there while a job is processing, watching it, babysitting it, witnessing the reattempted connections against data sources, dealing with flaky APIs in such a way that you're expected to just be able to sit there and watch it work its way through its problems, or tell you it's going to have to come back later because of the complete non-availability of that API, is valuable. That teaches you about the information environment out there. It teaches you about information technology and the way systems are talking to each other. Not everything should be built to be a at-scale, massive, scheduled, invisible job that isolates and insulates you from all the retries that might have been involved in doing that data pull. Sometimes the data pull is not at scale, it's much smaller. It's this one investigation. You need to know this one thing right now, and you're willing to sit there while the data collects. That's Pipulate in general, because there's zillions of things out there for scheduling jobs. I've always liked getting the scheduling feature in Pipulate, but it's not nearly as important as sitting there while a job runs. And if you don't want to sit there while the job runs, you should really be able to walk away from it with the confidence it's going to finish running. So all the retries and the timeouts and the backing off timeouts where the delays become larger between retries, all that stuff is actually very important, so that you can hit the button before you leave work with the confidence of knowing when you get back the next day, that job will be finished, because there's few feelings more awful than a batch job that didn't run overnight as you planned. So that is clearly what I'm working towards now with my current project. I've done the first few tutorials, the first tiny baby steps, because it's still very exciting to use Google Spreadsheets as the I/O layer. The place where you put the request jobs in, and the place where you watch the results sort of twinkle out as they process. But instead of twinkling line by line, which Pipulate always used to do, it's going to be in batched chunks, rectangular regions of cells that get updated 50 at a time, 100 at a time, whatever's most optimal. So the speed of Pipulating will still be inhibited when you're using Google Sheets as the I/O level, yet it will still be processing, you know, hundreds of times faster than it did when it was going line by line, which is much more appropriate for, you know, these modern times. Now that products like this have been around for a while, and the novelty of just being able to do these types of jobs as a everyday spreadsheet user and not a coder is starting to disappear, because there's so many you know, great tools out there. You know, building these types of things is getting a lot easier. So I have no interest in building something that has all this proprietary stuff built up around it. I just want to make jobs like the ones I described much, much easier to define and run, and to have run reliably when you leave them alone. And the tutorials I'm starting to do are leading up to that. You can see how I'm setting up to do those rectangular region selections, the cell ranges in Google Spreadsheets, or I guess Gspread, the Gspread API terminology, because I'll pull back, you know, an A1 through, you know, Z1000 rectangular region, pull it back local, process it however. It might be pandas, it might be something very much like today's Pipulate, I haven't quite decided. Update it back out, and that's it. Doing mass lookups against things like, you know, let's use page authority again, against a giant list, so that you can maybe do a second or a third type of lookup per URL while you're at it, without any sort of, you know, custom product that you have to buy. You just install Anaconda, which gives you Jupyter Notebook. You do a Git pull against GitHub, which gives you, you know, my support library to do this stuff. You put a file in place, you hit run in Jupyter Notebook, and bam, the job runs. That's Pipulate, probably 2.0, but I'm thinking maybe 3.0 to stay in lockstep with the Python 3.0 thing, because also a large part of this is my move to Python 3. So that's what's going on with my videos, with my tutorials, and the things I'll be talking about over the next few days and weeks and months, as this becomes the center of my day-to-day work. Thanks for joining me. Hope to talk to you soon. And as usual, don't forget to subscribe.